we think, like many other people, it really is the new electricity. There won't really be a category of AI companies. AI will be something that's embedded in every single product and service that we experience and use. And it will change everything much as electricity did. When you try and define it, there's really no agreement on what it means. And if you look at these examples from Stanford, from DARPA, from Accenture, from Andreessen Horowitz, and from Amazon itself, I quite like Amazon's description actually, the field of computer science dedicated to solving cognitive problems commonly associated with human intelligence, such as learning, problem solving, and pattern recognition. But there is no one definition, and that actually doesn't help us very much. It confuses people. And so we like to use a very simple example, and some of you may have seen this before. You know, you put a bunch of data in, dogs, cats as labels, it has a learning algorithm, and out pops an answer. And of course, it's a cat. But actually, I look at that, it looks a bit like a dog. But yeah, the idea is it's a learning algorithm, uses data to make decisions, so you don't program in advance. And there are many, many different flavors of AI. And Andrew Ng, who's quite a famous contributor to the space, you may have heard of, helpfully puts the different types of AI in an ordered list based on economic impact. And if you haven't seen this, I thought I'd share it. So at the top was supervised learning, transfer learning, which is a really interesting space, unsupervised learning, where you point the AI at the data and it figures things out. Reinforcement learning gets a lot of press, but actually the kind of good dog, bad dog thing isn't actually being used to solve many economic problems. Generative adversarial networks get a lot of press, obviously through AlphaGo and the incredible work that DeepMind's been doing. And really interesting at the bottom is one of the hardest challenges, meta-learning. So how do we use machine learning to train other machine learning? But the net of all this exciting stuff is, suffice to say, narrow AI, not general AI, but narrow AI has now eclipsed the ability of humans to do many specific tasks. And it happened in this, you can see from this chart, somewhere around 2015, 2016. And that means we can now recognize objects, we can restack and assess inventory on shelves, we can scan and survey buildings, and we can look at floodplains, all better with robots than we could, or with AI than we could with human intelligence. And the applications, and this is a chart from a recent McKinsey report, in terms of the different verticals and the domains are just vast. The areas of productivity improvement are across the board, they really are everywhere in the enterprise. And we're only just beginning to touch the surface of that. And guess what happens as a result of that? There are hundreds, not hundreds, thousands of new companies emerging which claim or are AI companies. And this is just a little sample of, we track about 10,000 AI products already at CognitionX, and this is a sample across the different industries. And we divide them into verticals and horizontals, the verticals being applications specific to one problem space, and the horizontals being the tools, the picks and the shovels and so on that we would use. Of course, those companies don't always stay around very long, because there are some big companies that come and eat up the small companies. And you can see at the top of that list, maybe unsurprising to some, is that Intel's right up there, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, and everybody is investing very heavily. I mean, this is a huge amount of investment, 12 billion in over 1,000 startups. But for us, one of the most exciting things that's often overlooked is not only who are going to be the new incumbent companies that emerge, but actually how is AI going to impact the enterprise, and what's the right strategy in the enterprise for transforming those businesses. And of course, nobody's really been asleep at the wheel. Big companies have been thinking about this for a while, and they've been doing acqui-hires and even some quite large acquisitions in order to get ready for that transformative stage. So what is going to differentiate companies in the future? And it's funny, a few years ago we used to get asked the question, should I hire an AI team? Should I outsource? Should I go to a big systems integrator? And the short answer is, if you really want to build competitive advantage, whether you're going to build it in-house or not, you're going to have an AI team in-house, even if it's just to assess the things you're going to use on the outside. And it's ultimately all going to be about thinking about how do you maximize the accuracy of your AI. And just think of these two examples. If you have a 1% difference in the performance of your online advertising, it changes the bottom line. And obviously, if you were talking to an Amazon Echo, as unfortunately sometimes happens, and it gets the wrong answer, we find that pretty unsatisfactory pretty quickly. So the first ethical issue that I just wanted to raise, and there are a number of big ones, and by all means this is not comprehensive, is what is this going to mean for the future of work? How do we think about the jobs that we are potentially leaving behind, the jobs that we're creating, and how society will have a sense of purpose? Big questions. I mean, these are massive, multi-dimensional, probably 20-year time horizon questions. Well, the good news is we have been here before, whether it was farming fields, which has obviously been largely automated. In fact, my business partner, Tabitha's boyfriend, has a farm where they've just installed a huge number of drones to take over jobs that would have been done by a human normally in terms of assessing crops. And so now they've got another issue, which is they're trying to hire drone operators. So there are new jobs being created there, aware of the potential risks of their uses. But we accept those challenges and we move forward. And so when it comes to thinking about work, I think that when it comes to AI and replacing things that would be done by human labor, I love this cartoon. You know, the robot teaching a class, and today's homework, working for a living, is working what old people used to do. And there's a question over what is the future of work? You know, is it, you know, what we've seen, this incredible success story around Uber, and certainly in London, and for my travel, I'm almost always in an Uber vehicle. But what happens to those Uber drivers as and when we see autonomous cars hit the road? Now, some people think it's going to be an idea like universal basic income or increasing the minimum wage, so we have underemployment, so we're overpaying people in less skilled jobs. And I think there's a lot of validity in that. But in the UK, we have a number of organisations. The Royal Society is probably the leading, but there's now 5 or 6 really thinking this and other issues through, and how do we get the narrative right? And the idea that you just give money to people and hope that they spend it wisely is perhaps not a great idea. But there's a growing amount of support around something called conditional basic income. And the idea with conditional basic income is that instead of just being given that money, you would get it in return for studying. And the more you studied, the more you would qualify it, and this would ensure that we start reskilling the population. So, just to summarize on the job displacement point, so governments clearly have a massive role to play. There's an over-focus on the 50% of jobs that might be at risk, and too little focus on the jobs where we actually have shortfalls today. Teachers, healthcare workers, actually wind turbine technicians. The key thing really is going to be how do we reskill people whose jobs have been displaced, which clearly is going to happen. And how do we enable those in gig economy roles to study, acquire skills, and re-enter the workforce? And certainly the momentum seems to be behind conditional basic income. The second thing I just wanted to talk about was surveillance. Now I think all of us, well, I certainly can put my hand up and say I have benefited enormously from the applications that surveil me. I got down here from San Francisco this morning and checked Google Maps, and of course that's surveilling me. I used Facebook to announce to my friends that I was here in San Francisco because I don't come into town very often. But there are lots and lots of issues here, and I'm sure you saw this when it originally came out. It certainly made me laugh. My dad told me you're spying on us. He's not your dad. But there are lots of jokes you can make about this space, and you know, don't worry, it's only marketers collecting our personal data so they can create more relevant ads for us. Or this one, particularly cute. I mean, we did a conference recently where we had some kids come on stage and talk about their view on privacy. And here, sure enough, is a kid in the classroom. Before I write my name on the board, I need to know how you're planning to use that data. And if any of you remember the old ads that ran on TV in America, you know, people really wondering whether there is such a thing as privacy in the future. And it only takes a little glancing around the internet to look at what's going on in China, where clearly there are different ethical standards and norms in society. And without getting too deeply into that debate, they're building a system which actually monitors every single citizen, what they're doing, not just for things like preventing security risks, but for insurance premiums and all kinds of other applications. And we do it here in the States as well. It's part of society. So the questions that start coming up is, as we add more and more AI, what is the correct level of surveillance? How much should we be looking into each other's lives, and what rights should we have as an individual? Now, some people think the answer to this is to move away from advertising-funded models. And I think Spotify is an example where they have both. They have ad-funded and subscription-funded. But the subscription idea is certainly a credible one to addressing this. But just like electricity got regulated and is now almost universally available, although parts of Africa are notably exceptions, and a few other countries, it needs government attention. In the UK, and just to bring things to a close from my perspective, I flew in yesterday, so apologies if I look a little bit tired, but the UK has been very busy and announced its sector deal. And this is to ensure that they have the right infrastructure and workforce in place. What is it? Well, the first thing is it's part of their industrial strategy. It's got $1 billion of funding behind it and $300 million for new research projects. A huge investment in skills, not just the computer science teachers, it's very important, but also 1,000 PhDs, and the Alan Turing Institute, which you may have come across. But probably most importantly, a new data ethics group, where £9 million has been put into a group that are solely looking at the ethical issues around AI and making recommendations as to what government policy should be in the future. So the last thing I was going to mention, just before we wrap up, is what part do we play in this? And at CognitionX, we are absolutely passionate that the whole world should have access to expert advice on AI for free. And so we've been busy building not just a research business which is commercial, but also a global expert network in AI. And so very simply, that means on any messaging application, you'll be able to ask a question related to AI, and it will come up in real time with the answer. But more than that, it will also ask you if you want to be connected to an expert, which will go find you an expert, message them and say, hey, do you want to talk to this person about their AI question? Can tell you more about that another day, but the idea is for that to be a globally available free service, and it's assisted by AI. The other thing we do is we run events, and I would invite any of you who want to get involved in CogX to do so. Last year we did it, and it was 1,300 people in London, and it was about the impact of AI on government and society. This year we're going to have the biggest AI event actually in the world, 6,000 people in the Tobacco Docks in London, with 300 speakers, and I'd welcome you all to come and join. And I know that Ravi and the team are going to circulate a code so that you can all attend for free if you make the trip over to London. So,
Go ahead.
I was just going to conclude very quickly. So there's no question we think humanity's better off for penicillin and electricity, and for it to reach its full potential, AI definitely needs to be in the hands of the many, not of the few. And no one company can solve all these problems, so it's great that all of this is open source, we can all use it. But I think at this time we need to find a way to partner with government all over the world to make sure that we get this regulation, whatever it is, around privacy and portability of our data, if you like, data sovereignty right. And the final thing is to make sure we get the support mechanism as we see the displacement of jobs and a move to an AI-powered society, whether that be conditional basic income or something else. Thank you very much.